Unless you're a politician or the head of some organization, you rarely get the opportunity to make a speech to a large captive audience, so I appreciate your attention, especially about anything you want, basically. The last time I made a speech was in June 2002 at my high school graduation. 10 years ago, not 10,000 years ago, 10 years ago. So now I'm faced with the prospect of giving another speech. So what to talk about? Naturally, I turned to the interval between then and now and considered the myriad things that have happened since I was in high school. 10 years is a long time. Some would say I've grown up since then, but that phrase has always mystified me. I certainly don't always feel grown up, especially when I get mistaken at my own desk for a student. So I got to thinking, what does growing up really mean, and how do you know when you've become a grown-up? And naturally, this question is personal, very personal. It's unique to everyone, and also everybody experiences a lot of growth, change, strife, grief, questions, and challenges on the road to adulthood. So first, let me tell you a little bit about my journey since high school. I have become a much more outgoing and social person because of my experience in college. I used to stay in my room and study languages all day. I don't do that anymore, although sometimes I wish I did. I learned to be a leader by conducting a cappella groups. I have also traveled extensively because of my membership in those groups, as we participated in concerts all over the United States and in over 30 countries. I worked as a research assistant for a psychology professor. I spent my entire savings. I took part in a secret society, yes, that kind of secret society, that allowed me the chance to get to know 15 other people, probably more intimately than my own family. And no, I will not teach you the secret handshake. I have had several relationships, each of which taught me something about myself and helped me to grow. I majored in philosophy, which all of you know is one of my passions, and much to the chagrin of my parents. What are you going to do with philosophy? I applied to a Catholic seminary and almost became a priest, but then I went through a crisis of faith that shook me to the core, and so I got a job as a choir director at a church instead. I taught foreign languages at Wellesley High School for 4 years, inaugurated their Chinese program, learned to cook, learned to care for my grandmother who suffers from Alzheimer's, earned a master's degree, directed lots of musicals, acted in a lot of musicals myself, and have gone to a lot of weddings, which is scary. A lot of which were for girls who I dated in high school. And last year I started to teach at Rivers. So I've experienced a lot in those 10 years. 10 years, 1 decade, is a long time. But it really doesn't feel like 10 years have passed since I was sitting in your chairs, a teenager waiting to be set free from secondary schooling and all the restraints that entailed. But in many ways, I am exactly the same person I was 10 years ago. My basic values and interests are the same. They were discovered and established very early. I still love to have deep conversations with people. I love to figure out what makes people tick. I still love to think, and music, and languages, and performing, and traveling, and learning, and teaching. But now I'm an adult. I'm older. I'm financially independent. I live on my own. I support myself and other people. And I have responsibilities that affect other people's lives. I have authority. Well, at what time between June 2002 and now did I officially become an adult? Like I said, I certainly don't always feel like one, and sometimes I wish I weren't one. I don't always like to be burdened with responsibility, and I hate going to bed early, but I do like freedom and money. So upon reflection, I've come to the conclusion that I'm an adult whether I like it or not, kind of in spite of myself. I have to be. In my view, you're an adult when the principal reason you do things is not because other people tell you to do them, but because you yourself decide to. Almost everything in life can be boiled down to the choices you make. And as a child, most choices are made for you by your parents, your teachers, your relatives, your mentors. By modeling yourself on the adults around you, you learn to make your own choices. And then as you age, you're given more and more independence until ultimately no one can or probably should tell you what to do. So think about it. How many choices do you make on a daily basis, from the most mundane to the most profound? You choose when to wake up, what to eat for breakfast, if you eat breakfast. If you drive, you decide when to leave for school. You decide whether to be on time, etc., etc. Okay, but more generally, you decide how to spend your time. You decide which classes to take, which extracurriculars to participate in, how much time to spend on Facebook at night. And then as you get older, these choices become more grave and momentous. You decide what to major in, what jobs to apply for, what to spend your money on, whom to spend your life with, how to eat, whether or not to exercise, whom to vote for, how much sleep to get, whether or not to raise a pet or a family. You choose how to treat other people and whether to cheat or be honest. The list is infinite, and so are the choices. And ultimately, you only answer to yourself, not your parents, not your teachers, not your friends. You are the final judge, because in life, you can shut out absolutely everyone and everything else, except yourself. You're stuck with you. No matter where you go, there you are. And no matter which way you slice the pie, you cannot separate yourself from your choices. You and you alone are responsible for your choices. There is no one else to hold accountable. And this was one of the hardest realizations for me to make as an adult. For example, and they can be very mundane examples or very profound examples. You can decide what these mean. If I don't come to work, if I don't get up because I'm tired, because I'm sick, or because I'm unprepared, because I didn't sleep well, I could lose my job. That's a pretty big choice. Let's say later on when I have a family, I'm going to have to decide for my children whether or not to bring them up with some religious affiliation. In both instances, there's no one there to force me either way. And it can get complicated and lonely and scary figuring these things out. Because the question always is, am I making the right choice? Am I proud of my choices? Because when I make a choice to do something, I also make a choice not to do something else. In other words, every time I turn one way, I turn away from something else. And therefore, I would argue that our choices are often the most important part of our life because they define us and they affect others often. So where do these choices come from within me? How do I make a choice? How do I make a good choice? How do my choices reflect on me? Choices are a mixture of experience and character. So the first thing I needed to do, and this took a long time and I'm still not done, was to reflect, ruminate, introspect, and discover who I am and what excites me, what drives me, what am I passionate about, what are my truths, what drives me, what do I love, what do I hate, what do I feel, what do I believe, and why do I believe it? The ancient Greeks said, know thyself, and that saying always had a profound effect on me. And I dared to dig deeply and answer honestly, and this, of course, I think, is what drove me to philosophy and secret societies and traveling and music in the first place, as forums for self-exploration and discovery. And what I realized is if I can't answer these kind of questions, then the choices that I make, whether big or small, are either random and unfounded, or entirely someone else's choices, not my own. But if I can be honest with myself, then it is impossible to be wrong about the choices I make. So I allowed myself to explore. And I think Shakespeare said it best. This, above all, to thine own self be true, and it must follow as the night the day, thou canst not then be false to any man. And I found an excellent way to do this was to discuss myself with others, to compare, contrast, inquire, debate, to see myself in the reflection of another's eyes. Did I like what I saw? I allowed myself to be vulnerable, to take criticism graciously and seriously, to really think about what people said about me, and to learn and grow from those things. This was the way to be my best self. So take a moment to consider one thing you know to be true about yourself. This, and all the many other things, truths, pervade and affect your being and your decision-making process. So now I've discovered myself, at least more deeply than ever before, and now I had to stay true to that self. How do you do that? I needed to be strong, and I think have the courage to stand up for what I discovered in myself. So I imagine that each and every one of us here has at some point demonstrated courage in one way or another, and we have in our own way discovered at these moments, when it is demanded, that courage always has a price tag. Is it not an act of courage to tell a friend that you think cheating is wrong, whether on a test or behind the back of a loved one? Is it not an act of courage to present ourselves as we really are rather than as others want us to be or expect us to be? Is it not an act of courage to confront, address, and subvert cruelties like intolerance, racism, discrimination, rather than going along with the slur, joke, or worse, some overt act of violence? Is it not an act of courage to be true to ourselves and our beliefs while ignoring the many possible negative consequences which a willful majority may inflict upon us? We all know it's easy just to go along with the crowd, but if you do so without thinking, then you compromise yourself and everything you hold dear. And shame is not an easy feeling to deal with. It is the little acts of courage that help win for us our dignity and our self-respect. So take a moment now to think of a time when you displayed courage in a meaningful way. It's a good feeling, right? It is at times like these when you're being your best self. You have no regrets, and you know that given the same circumstances, you would do the same thing again. That's nobility. That's leading a noble life. So my point is this. I think it takes courage to discover the truth about yourself and to make the right choices. So I challenge you just to never stop searching for what makes you run, what gives you purpose and strength, what comprises your intellectual and spiritual essence. And I challenge you to find your way to courage and therefore to yourselves. Do everything you do while manifesting the courage of your convictions and the truth of your beings. If you do this, you will always make the right choice. You will succeed. Your life will be full and you will be grateful for every day you are alive. And eventually, soon, for some of you even within 10 years, children will be looking to you as the models for their own choices. You will be the teachers, the adults, whether you like it or not. And you will be responsible for their success or failure as well as your own. So when do you reach adulthood? It's your choice. Thank you.